All right.
All
Cool.
right, let's begin. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope everybody is doing well, and it's so nice to see your faces, those that I can see. My name is Mackenzie Mager, and I'm the Associate Program Officer at Maccabi USA, and I'm very excited to introduce both our moderator and our guest tonight. Our moderator, she couldn't stay away, too long. We had to pull her back in a little bit, but for those of you who do know her, that is Samantha Sammy Poley, a former colleague of mine and my other colleagues at Maccabi USA. She spent 3.5 years with us. Sammy is actually currently in her second year at Villanova University Charles Whitaker School of Law. And before beginning law school, Sammy attended Boston University, majoring in poli-sci, and was a 4-year member of the women's ice hockey team, and also served as the team's student assistant coach her senior year. After graduating from BU, Sammy was the recruiting coordinator and assistant coach for Manhattanville College women's ice hockey team. And she also served as the advisor to the school's Student Athlete Advisory Council and earned an MS in Sports Business Management. Like I said, after Manhattanville, Sammy spent 3.5 years as an athletic program.
Oh, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I'm on mute. What was the last thing you heard, Sammy?
Maccabi USA.
Okay. So she spent 3.5 years with Maccabi USA and simultaneously working as the head coach of the University of Pennsylvania women's ice hockey team, was the commissioner of New England Women's Junior Hockey League and advisor to the Philadelphia Revolution Ice Hockey Club. She is a USA Hockey Level 4 coach and has worked with the USA Hockey Women's National Team Development Program. At Villanova University School of Law, Sammy is a research assistant for the school's law library. She's a brand representative for LexisNexis, the treasurer of the Jewish Law Students Association, and on the Sports Law Society event committee. Sammy completed a summer judicial clerkship with the Honorable Judge Daniel D. McCaffrey of the Pennsylvania Superior Court, and she has also completed internships with the United States Attorney Office for the District of Massachusetts and Montgomery County, Pennsylvania District Attorney's Office. After graduation, Sammy looks forward to pursuing a career intersecting sports and law. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Sammy. Now I'd love to introduce our guest tonight, Jessica Gellman, who is the CEO of Kraft Analytics Group, a technology and services company focused on data management, advanced analytics, and strategic consulting in the sports and entertainment space. She joined the Kraft family in 2002, working for the sports properties, so that includes the Patriots, the New England Revolution, and Gillette Stadium. Prior to KAGR's creation in 2016, Gellman led business operations, customer marketing, and strategy for Kraft Sports and Entertainment. Gellman co-founded and continues to co-chair the highly regarded MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference, the first and largest analytically focused sports conference. Previous speakers have included President Barack Obama, Adam Silver, Steve Ballmer, Nate Silver, and many other sports and analytics luminaries. Gellman has received recognition for her leadership and innovation, including the 2014 Sports Business Journal 40 Under 40, which honors the most promising young executives in sports business under the age of 40, and in 2012 Sports Business Journal's Game Changers, which honors women who are leading and innovating in sports business. Gellman earned an MBA from Harvard Business School and a BA cum laude from Harvard College. She was selected as Harvard Female Athlete of the Year while she was playing basketball at Harvard, and in 2018 was honored as an Ivy League legend. After college, Gellman played a year of professional basketball in Israel. She is an elected board member of the Harvard Alumni Association and Harvard Varsity Club. Additionally, Gellman is a member of For Peace Players, International Shooting Touch, and Sports Innovations Lab. Wow, lots of accomplishments amongst both our moderator and guest tonight. Thank you again, and for everybody who is just joining us, welcome. I would like to hand it over to Sammy now.
Thanks, Mackenzie. I appreciate the ask to be here tonight, and I'm very happy to welcome Jessica Gellman here, our special guest. So I want to start the night off tonight with a real simple question. How did you get your start playing basketball?
Well, so I grew up outside of Chicago in a community called Highland Park, which I'm guessing those in the Jewish community know of. It's a pretty heavily Jewish populated community. So there wasn't a lot of basketball being played there, to be totally honest, but I tried out for my junior high school team in 6th grade. That was my first exposure to basketball, and I immediately fell in love with it. Before that, I was a soccer player, but so I didn't start playing until 6th grade, which is very interesting, and I think kind of quickly goes into my story playing for in the Maccabi youth games, which I tried out for in 7th grade and made the team. And it was a lot of older kids, but it was a huge awakening about not only basketball, but the broader connections and community that can be created around sport. And I'm happy to talk more about the youth games, but that just for perspective, I started relatively late and then had a very early connection to the Maccabi youth games, trying out, growing, learning, having exposure, and obviously having exposure to the Jewish community in a way that I had never had before, which was very meaningful.
Oh, that's really interesting. My brother happened to compete in the JCC Maccabi games as well, and found that it was one of the easier ways to connect religion and sport. As a young athlete, did you struggle balancing athletics and religion, or face any hurdles such as anti-Semitism in sports?
Not as a young athlete, I would say. So I grew up in a very Jewish community, and in particular, I actually grew up, was raised Reform. So I didn't have some of the challenges that I saw some of my teammates on the Maccabi games deal with respect to Sabbath. But again, that was a big learning experience because most of the people in the community that I grew up in were Reform. So getting exposure to all these different, conservative and Orthodox was incredibly enlightening. But no, I didn't as a young kid playing. Later on, I definitely did have some exposure and especially like there aren't, as most of you know, there aren't that many Jewish female basketball players. And I can say this because I was a quote Jewish All-American at Harvard in basketball. And I think it was mostly because there just weren't a lot of Division I Jewish basketball players.
I hear you on that front. There aren't very many Jewish female ice hockey players playing in the collegiate ranks either. So what was it like playing for Harvard, where you had the honors of being selected Harvard Female Athlete of the Year, and you were also inducted as an Ivy League basketball legend?
Well, I want to go back and just talk a little bit about the Maccabi games, because one of the things that was really meaningful for me is that one of my teammates, again, her dad was actually a Holocaust survivor, and I had not met anyone previously who had been a survivor. And I remember visiting her, and her dad was this like incredibly warm, open person, and he showed me the tattoos. The numbering on his arm, it's not really a tattoo, obviously. But it gave me such an interest in better understanding what the Holocaust was. I think as like a 13-year-old, you don't really have a concept of how close that was to us, but also that people we knew were impacted, because you just kind of read about it, and it really brought it home and connected it for me. And ultimately is what gave me a lot of interest in going to Israel after I was done with my college experiences. But playing at Harvard was phenomenal. I had an amazing experience. My coach is actually still the basketball coach at Harvard, and her name's Kathy Delaney Smith, and she's one of the legends, all-time winningest coach at Harvard, all-time winningest coach in the Ivy League, even surpassing Pete Carroll. And just, I think more than anything, taught me and exposed me to so much more, not only as an athlete, but as a human being. And I think just allowed us to love the game. And also, you know, not for nothing, the teams that I played on were like awesome. So that always makes playing any sport a lot more fun. We were actually quite bad my first year, but then we turned it around and ended up my last couple years there being the first Harvard tournament to go to the NCAA tournament and compete in it. So playing in March Madness was obviously incredible experience. I mean, not like the experiences that Nancy Lieberman-Klein had last week that she probably shared about basketball, but in my own little world, it was a big deal. And then my senior year, we were the first team in Ivy League history to go undefeated, meaning we went through the Ivy League twice and didn't lose any games. And so just to be a part of helping to create a tradition and being on such amazing teams. But of course, the most important parts of playing were my teammates. They're still some of my best friends in the world. I think anyone who plays sports can speak to that connection. And even now, those are the people who I go back and talk to. And I think more than that for me as an executive leading an organization, as someone who wants to have and create change, having those experiences of being the first to do things and be on teams that could build and have impact and do things differently. I mean, I learned all of those ways of thinking and kind of confidence in the ability to do that playing sports through my whole life, but then having that amazing experience at Harvard solidified and I think ultimately gave me a tremendous amount of confidence going into the sports industry on the business side, and then ultimately with the founding of the Sloan Conference and then Kager. Yeah. So sorry, I kind of went there for a little bit, but I had a great experience at Harvard.
No, it's quite all right. I think it's really important to tell everyone how positive a collegiate athletic experience can be and how impactful it really is on the rest of your life. Now,
it was hard, by the way, balancing the academics of Harvard and having like a little bit of a social life, maybe a little too much of a social life, and playing basketball. I mean, it was complicated, but I think for all of us, especially as you progress in your career, as you're trying to balance a family. I have 2 young kids, and having any time with my wife, like that, it's difficult. And then you're also, running a company and worried about your staff, and especially during something like the pandemic, concerned about the mental health of all the people that, I feel a great amount of accountability and responsibility. But I think learning those skills of balance in college, I remember a lot of people question my decision to go to Harvard, right? Like, why don't you go and go to a big time basketball school? And I definitely had those opportunities. But I really wanted the full college experience. And I think having the opportunity to build something unique at Harvard was just an opportunity I personally couldn't pass up. So
it's glad to hear. You took the risk, and the risk has surely paid off for you.
I think you're the only person that would say going to Harvard was a risk.
Well, I mean, I personally went to a hockey school. I went to BU.
Yeah.
Our program really hadn't had a winning season before my class joined the program, and we won our first championship my freshman year. I'm proud to say that we were able to accomplish those things. But going to BU, it was a risk for me, but I knew that that was the education that I wanted, and it sounds like you wanted that experience as well. So you talked a lot about wanting to have a traditional college experience, but also learning a lot from your coaches at Harvard. Is that part of the reason that you pursued the opportunity to coach at the JCC Maccabi games?
So it's actually really interesting because, again, I had this great connection to sport and to Judaism, and I now at this point was based in Boston. And actually, like, I hadn't really thought about Boston much when I grew up outside of Chicago, but the way that the Maccabi games work is that you have a couple of players from an opposing team, or this is how it used to work, who come and stay with you if you're the host city. And so we had 2 people from Boston. And so it seemed pretty full circle that there was an opportunity. I was kind of like in the Maccabi network at that point, because I also played in the games in, I think, '89 in Detroit. So this was just a couple years later. So the Boston team was looking for a coach. they went to Harvard, which would obviously have a lot more Jewish athletes, women basketball players. And it was an opportunity I didn't want to pass up. And it was great. First of all, I thought I was a little too young to be in charge of a bunch of 13, 14, and 15-year-olds in Cleveland. But we had a great time. It was fun to have it was pretty early on in my college career, so I hadn't had the full impact of Kathy on my life yet. But I'm a big proponent of giving back. That's really a lot of what the Sloan Conference is and has evolved to, and why I remain so involved with Harvard and Harvard athletics, because it was a good experience for me. And the same goes with the opportunity to coach and help give some of these young women from Boston the opportunities and exposure that I have. They have in the Maccabi games, the youth games, they have this amazing opening ceremonies, and there's people that come in beyond the U.S. And there's a couple of folks who came from Mexico, and they of course had the best outfits. This is my memory from my first year, and I somehow did get the sombrero, which is the big win if you compete. And so just even like giving some strategies to get the best costume was really a really phenomenal give back that I could share with the girls on the team. But yeah, no, it was fun. And I think it's important that if you've had a good experience, to help people behind you have a good experience. And that's just a core part of who I am.
I do remember having attended the Pan Am Maccabi games in Mexico City back in the summer of 2019. The big ticket items from the host country were the sombreros and the ponchos. It's always interesting to see a sombrero flying through the air in a major sports arena, trying to go from one delegation to the next. So yes, there is strategy to it, and I'm glad that you were able to pass on that wisdom to the young athletes there. So as your career progressed, you traveled overseas to play professionally in Israel. How did you learn about the opportunity, and did you have any reservations about playing abroad or being paid as a female athlete, knowing that the pay disparity in women's athletics worldwide tends to be very different?
Yeah, women do get paid less. It's been kind of a big story the last year or so. But I guess really the last 25 years since Billie Jean really fought for Title IX. I did have extreme reservations. I was actually contacted by a team in Israel during my senior season. And to be fair, this was before the WNBA, which is just a way of dating myself. It was founded the year I graduated from college, but they contacted me, and honestly, I was thrilled. The opportunity, or the thinking about getting paid to play basketball, it didn't really matter what I was paid, because remember, I wasn't being paid anything. And I thought it would be a really good experience and an opportunity to travel the world. I had not been outside of the United States. I don't count going to the Bahamas 3 times for spring break as outside the United States, but I had not been outside the United States. So I didn't really know what I was getting myself into in deciding to go to Israel. As anyone, I'm assuming most people who are listening have been there. It is a different culture than the United States. But I had a lot of reservations. It was 1997, so just a little bit of perspective. Suicide bombings were quite prominent at that point in time. I was playing for a team outside of Tel Aviv in Ramat Sharon. The internet was not quite what it is today. It was a dial-up. The costs for it were incredibly high. So as someone coming from an environment like Harvard, where it was all my best friends and my teammates, and we were on this common goal, and I was a point guard, and I was setting everyone else up to be successful, and I go and I'm a professional athlete, and that is actually my job. And I had gotten used to the mental stimulation of not only the academics at Harvard, but also the people and the conversations I was having there. And so, but I loved the ability to just be able to work on my trade, I guess, as you would call it, all day. So in going there, I made Aliyah. So I had the opportunity to basically be an Israeli on the team and I went to the classes. I took the bus into Tel Aviv, and they would lend me a car so I could go visit some of the other Americans who are in other communities. And that's probably my scariest tale that I'll share from my time in Israel, which is, again, I just want to repeat, I had not been outside the United States before. So the whole kilometers, not miles per hour, was really confusing to me. I had no idea how fast I was going, nor what the speed limit was. And the car was a little, rickety, meaning it was very unsafe. But the experience of getting to go to Israel, the community that I was in was Ramat Sharon, which is a very warm community. It's obviously a nice community too. But the way that my teammates, and in particular their families, and some of the parts of Ramat Sharon are, challenged economically, but these folks who maybe lived in a 2-bedroom apartment would open their home, invite me in for the Sabbath. Like, just some of my favorite memories from my time there have nothing to do with basketball. It has to do with getting this exposure to these experiences and the people that I got to meet. And while there's, I'll say, like a rough exterior to some of the people I was engaging with, the openness and kindness and the heart and how they share it was really fascinating. And also, just as like a 22-year-old who's coming from a very privileged background, and to have and be exposed to so many people on my team who were had been in the military and their experiences, and how so many of them had lost friends. I mean, again, it was one of the most eye-opening experiences in terms of just helping me understand how small my place in the world is, and was relative, and what the opportunities could be. So I'm very glad I went. It was also one of the most challenging experiences that I've ever had in my life, but great to have that kind of an experience kind of early on. So yeah.
It's wonderful to hear that you really took a lot from the experience there. And I'm sure that a lot of those lessons have translated over to your role working in sports. So you work.
I mean, just actually, like, I was kind of burnt out on playing basketball when I was graduating. I was just like, oh, I'm tired. This is hard. But I knew that I wanted to go into sports one day and be on the other side. And so in my head, I thought, it's going to be a great experience to be the product and, be what you're trying to now sell and market and get people passionate about. But just learning some of the inner workings, especially, again, being a professional athlete, and the way that I was treated by the coach and the ownership group. Again, there wasn't a focus on your improvement and self-betterment like you have in college. It was very much, we need you to do this. So again, I was a point guard, and I mean, I scored a fair number of points in college. I still scored 1,000 points, but I like setting people up. Like, I like making the people around me better. And when I went to play, the style of play and what was being asked of me was kind of counter to how I enjoy playing. And they were just upset that I wasn't shooting enough or more. And, were threatening to fine me if I didn't do more of the things that they, quote, wanted me to be doing. So, that was challenging to actually change the style of play and to adjust to that professional level. But it gave me such an appreciation for when you have, I mean, now we have exposure and work across the Sixers and the Kings and a bunch of NBA teams, but even with football, where I've spent a lot of my professional career in terms of getting exposure, the players they're coming right out of college. Like, they're coming into an environment that is very challenging. And I think being able to understand and relate to that just gives a very unique perspective in terms of thinking about how to help. Not that I'm on anything player development wise, but from a marketing perspective and engaging with fans, it's helpful to understand where they're coming from.
It's very important. I agree with you. So now transitioning to your role working in sports, how did the opportunity to work for the New England Patriots and New England Revolution come about? And what roles have you held within the Kraft Sports Empire and Kraft Analytics Group?
So I went to Harvard Business School. I did a couple, after I played overseas, I just did it for a year, and I had accepted a consulting job at a firm in New York. There was a spinoff of McKinsey. I don't believe it exists anymore. It got acquired during the dot-com boom and then bust in the late 90s. But so I went to business school with a focus of going into the sports industry, and this was actually uncommon at that time. Now it is much more common. There were maybe 2 or 3 alumni from HBS who were in sports. Well, you know who one of those is. It's Robert Kraft. And coincidentally, during my second year, so they do say that timing is everything. It's also about making your own luck too. So during my second year of business school, the Gillette Stadium was being built, and the Krafts were looking for a field study to come and evaluate and basically help better leverage the asset of the stadium, which they were going to have debt against. And so we did a field study, which is basically a business case analysis of how to monetize the club space, which, if you guys have watched Patriots games on TV, they're the red seats in the second level, and behind them is a very nice plush area, and people pay a little bit more for that. But the question is, on non-game day, how do you leverage that asset? What kind of events could you host? So weddings, bat and bar mitzvahs, graduations, whatever it might be. So we did really a very similar to a consulting project that I would have done before I went to business school. We did that and applied it from a business case. So we went in and gave our presentation about 3 weeks before I graduated. They liked it and thought it was really good, and asked me on my way out if they could help open any doors in sports. And so, of course, being a diligent student, I followed up, and they ultimately created a role for me, which was helping them evaluate businesses that would ultimately become Patriot Place down at Gillette Stadium. And I'll kind of go into what happened there. But I think the key thing there is that, one, Gillette Stadium happened to be being built during my second year of business school. So it's only like the second stadium that's ever been built in Massachusetts. So good timing for me. Couldn't have predicted that. The team also, if you don't know, that year, just to bring timelines, was the year that they won their first Super Bowl. So we started our project, and they were, maybe going to make the playoffs. And then by the time, midway through, they won the Super Bowl. So positive, there's a good opportunity. They're growing as a business. And so then ultimately, I think they were like, oh, maybe Jessica's it wasn't Tom Brady. Maybe Jessica's been doing some work with us. So that's the luck. I'm just kidding. I did say that to Tom Brady once. He laughed a little too hard when I said that. But I was obviously kidding. So I evaluated. I started in my early days. I was evaluating a bunch of different businesses, writing, evaluating. Should we bring a hotel? Is there an opportunity? Again, kind of classic consulting work. But what's amazing, and why I've been working for the Krafts for so long, is that they're so entrepreneurial, and they are very focused on growth, and they look for new things. And that's probably like some of the most important stuff I've learned from them, is to be ahead, not react to what's coming. And so pretty early on, I think my second year, Jonathan had a great idea to create a loyalty program where you could basically earn points on a credit card. Sounds like pretty old hat now, but we basically built a program with MBNA, then MBNA, now Bank of America, called Patriots Extra Points, and conceived of it, did the technology, all of the appropriate points, and then it rolled out. It ultimately rolled out across the NFL, and it was a great way to engage fans. It was very early on from a data perspective. So this is like 2003, like it is a long time ago, and you're just trying to understand who your customers are. And then over time, I started running different parts of the actual business operations. I took over the ticketing business and brought the focus on understanding the customer, looking at ticket pricing, things as simple as just being able to understand the tenure of our customers. Started doing very basic analytics like retention models, which seems like such a long time ago. And then had a tremendous amount of success there. So I took over the retail business, which is an e-commerce store at the time and a couple of physical stores. And that was awesome from the perspective of supply chain management and, again, customer engagement and acquisition. And the type of work was just really compelling. I was already doing all the marketing and data warehousing. That was kind of what I did before the ticketing and retail, and applying analytics to understanding the customer. And then in God, maybe 9 years ago, I started to see these similarities between the stuff that we needed to do on the customer side, which, again, remember when I first kind of started taking over and running these things, like Facebook didn't exist. This concept of being able to know who opened an email didn't exist. People would just take a bunch of emails and just send it out and not have a direct connection. So, so the work that we were doing on the customer side with understanding them, well, we needed to be able to do that same kind of work on the operations side. So we would want to know, I mean, this is a very basic example, but if you're a Patriots fan, and many of you guys are down in Philadelphia, an Eagles fan, it's important to know if people are buying green or black jerseys, right? Because you don't want to run out of inventory. And do women buy more of one color and men buy more of another? And you're going to make adjustments. So that's data. And we really got into it. But the challenge is that we couldn't get the information we needed out of the platforms, out of the systems we were using. It was like PDFs and crap. And so did a bunch of research, and the Crafts were really great about pushing me to think differently, apply analytics as I had been doing across the various parts of the Kraft Sports and Entertainment, and had been saying to me, if you come up with an idea, let us know. And so I did research for 7 months, and I said, hey, like, here's all the issues we have as a business. We need to, build a data warehouse. I want to integrate data visualizations, analytics, make the information democratized across the organization. This is how much money we need. These are all the people we need to hire. And kind of, on the side, this could be that business, by the way. And the feedback was, that obviously happened. So just to cut to the punch there. But I didn't expect the response to be as positive as it was, and from the Crafts, and it was really great. And we started basically building the infrastructure for Kraft Sports and Entertainment. And then a couple of years later, we spun out Kager. We were having so many people who were calling and asking what we were doing and how we were doing it. And so the need was so obvious, I guess I would say, but also just as someone who was in it and just dealing with the pain of the systems and wanting to get the data and all of the work, it was just to simplify it and help people. And again, the Sloan conference, the exposure that I was getting to the challenges across the industry certainly helped in a lot of that thinking too.
That's really interesting how that story has really evolved. Along the lines there, I think the Patriots won some championships while you were there. Did you get any hardware?
I got a few.
Oh, let's see.
I'm gonna put them on. Yeah, hold on. I didn't have them all. So they have. These are the last 3. So I'll just. Okay, here's the most recent one. Can you see that?
Oh,
that's
wow.
The 6, yeah. My wife is upset because she says Robert has given me, so many rings that are significantly bigger than here. Just for scale, there's my engagement ring. So this is the 4th one, and then this is the 5th one. I can't really wear them, especially now with Kager. We work across. These are all basically predate Kager in many ways, but we work across. We've built a platform for the NFL that is across all the teams in the NFL, and around ticketing, and which is we're very proud of. And again, I mentioned earlier some of the other teams in other industries that we. I think this is the one you're looking for. S52, number 6. So is that the right one?
I think
I'm looking at the chat. That was what I
think my former boss here is actually referencing the one that's on maybe Nick Foles' finger.
Oh. Yeah,
that's where he's headed.
It's hard. listen, that was a great game. I mean,
It
what can
was.
you do? Philly special. It was special.
And
Very
I'm sure that everybody's gone through and analyzed it and figure out where they went wrong to correct it for next time.
I mean, listen, at this, so I've gone to, in my lifetime with the Patriots or Kraft organization, 9 Super Bowls. So feel very fortunate. I missed the first one, obviously, because I wasn't officially. And I think we have 5, in my time, 5 wins and 4 losses. So, I'll take the positive on that. I subsequently, now one of our clients is On Location Experiences, a long-time client, basically since the first year of Kager. But I went to the Super Bowl this past year for the first time in my career without the Patriots in it, and it was actually really a different experience. It was quite enjoyable not to have the stress on the game. I will say I was rooting for the Chiefs, so I was glad that they won. That was great for them on 50 years later. Is a great story. So
yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Now, transitioning back to Kager, the company focuses on data management, advanced analytics, and strategic consulting in the sports and entertainment space. Can you explain to us what that means in layman's terms, and how do you quiet the noise?
Yeah, so I actually that's funny. I was making a reference to when I was in college, I studied sports psychology. And one of the ways to be successful in pressure situations is to quiet the noise and not be in your own head. And then if you've done some data analytics work or data analytics work, if you say data or data, it's that there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of information that is not relevant. And so you effectively want to quiet the noise and find the insights because there's so much information that's out there. So, I mean, basically, we're helping sports organizations, teams, leagues, other players like a Ticketmaster in the space. We're helping them think about how they can better understand their customers. And what's so unique about sports organizations is that you have a lot of different systems that are capturing customer information. So I like to think about it, if you buy a ticket, that's in one system. If you buy a hat, that's in another system. If you sign in for Wi-Fi, that's in another system. And it's unlike, say, like Netflix, that you're buying one product from them and everything is connected in one area. So not that this isn't unusual in other areas. I've heard stories with Disney where they have, for example, the names of the characters in every single different system, meaning when people go to Disneyland, when people buy videos, when people buy product, they have different naming conventions, which makes it challenging for them to know whether The Incredibles or, Cinderella is really selling. So that data cleaning is a huge challenge across all industries. But in our case, it's really twofold. One, understanding the customer and what they're engaging in and what they're buying and what they want more of. And that could be from what they're clicking on in emails to what they're buying, and then thinking about upselling, cross-selling to things that might give them more fandom. I mean, at the end of the day, like the reason I wanted to go into the sports industry is that some of my favorite memories growing up out of Chicago, and we didn't go to a lot of sporting events when I was growing up as a family, but the Super Bowl shuffle with the Bears was when I was probably like 10 or 11 years old. And I mean, I went to a game that year and it is a favorite memory of mine. And we parked really far away. And that was terrible because I had short legs and it was very cold. But I remember that. And then, obviously I was a huge Michael Jordan fan. And I went to one game and like sat behind a pole with my dad, but getting to see Michael Jordan play live was like a huge experience for me. And having that with my dad was an awesome experience too. And so I think about like, if my dad had known that we were going to be sitting behind a pole, would he have spent like an additional $30 to like move over a little bit? Probably. So how can you help create these great experiences and have customers be informed about what they're actually buying? So the customer side is one, but then the other is making sure from an operations perspective, and this is the other part that's like less sexy, but actually from a business perspective as valuable, which is when you go to a game, if you are going to buy anything, a hot dog, a pretzel, water, maybe not a hot dog, it's a kosher hot dog, and whatever it might be, if that stand doesn't have what you need, that is a miss, right? And so our intention is say, okay, Wednesday night games, you know, at with the Flyers, for example, they're a new client that was actually just publicly announced today, by the way, of ours. Yeah, they want to know that people are always going to this stand, and they might want to give you an offer to go to a different stand and get that same product for less. Or they want to talk to the vendor that they use or who are doing all the work and say, you know what, we keep running out of this item at this stand. That's a bad customer experience. And so, I mean, that's it, that we're trying to help organizations manage the information to create a better experience for their customers, understanding what they want more and delivering more of that. And so we present that, we do the foundational work, which is really the hard part. Most of folks in sports and tech, they'll talk about like the super sexy things, but you got to get that clean data first that you trust before you can take the next step. So we do a bunch of data visualization that are kind of consistent across the industry, certain KPIs that everyone looks at, and then we'll integrate analytic models into the data visualization. So so you might have, for example, if you're we did a huge analysis for the NFL where we defined all the different types of buyers across all of the teams. So we're looking at the buying behaviors, and it's very cool because it's unique that we're not just looking at one team, but we can look at it more broadly, obviously only for the NFL. But then we defined a bunch of different buckets of buying types, people who buy late and how they think about it, people who buy early and how they think about it, people who buy for families and all of this. Some of the things you might naturally think, but then to get a better understanding of the interest and inventory and the price that you should be putting out at various times. So I think it's really fun. Obviously, I've made a career of it, but yeah, that's the type of stuff that hopefully from a layman's perspective, that was a good explanation.
No, it definitely was. It's some of what I've learned in some of my classes at school. So it's really nice to hear that everything I'm learning in the classroom does translate to the real world sometimes.
And
it does. So one of my professors, Professor Andrew Brandt, he was on one of our Maccabi USA at home conversations back in this early summer. He had told me a little bit about the MIT Sloan Sports Analytic Conference. So can you tell us about the conference, what it is, and how it's changed the way we approach and view the modern sporting era?
I mean, wow, that was a lot of pressure. Well, let me start with the association with Maccabi USA. So Marshall, who is the CEO, obviously, he was actually the first student lead of the MIT Sloan Sports Conference back in 2006? Yeah, 2006. And he had been a student in the class that Daryl Morey, he and I co-founded the conference. He's the GM of the Houston Rockets still. And when he got the job in Houston, we came up and conceived of the idea of turning our class into a conference. And I think that first year we had like 120 people total, and it was all over the MIT campus. It was snowing. We definitely were feeding people like cozy. It was a one-day event. I don't even know if it was a full day, Marshall. I think it was maybe like 6 hours. But
I tell my kids it was a whole week. You know, it's like.
So I mean, it was obviously really fun for me when Marshall, started in his role with Maccabi USA. I was like, wow, talk about it coming full circle, coming into sports, and then my connection to the Maccabi game. So yeah, so that's the real history. But the creation of the conference, I mean, I kind of shared a little bit of it, but what's really fun about the success of the conference is that it's really an opportunity for Daryl and myself to help coach students applying what they're learning in school to business. In many ways, they're running a small business, and we get to teach them about negotiating with vendors. We get to teach them about the best outreach that they should be having with speakers. I mean, just for perspective, by the way, last year we had 120 speakers at the conference, not 120. And we snuck it in right before the pandemic. I will say we did not know the pandemic was the pandemic, but we were the last event before everything shut down. And if I knew then what I know now, we would certainly not have had the conference, but we got lucky. We didn't have any that I'm aware of, or that we're aware of, any results from it. But the conference, you know, today is, I think, just to provide a perspective for scale for those of you guys on the call, you know, we have anywhere from, depending on the year, 3,200 to 3,500 folks attend the conference. I know it's crazy, and it is a full, it's actually almost 2.5 days, because the day before the conference, while we're setting up, we have a bunch of competitions going on. ESPN has hosted a hackathon that obviously we're part of, and they've hired a ton of people out of the conference. And then the conference itself will have 5 or 6 activities going on at any given time. You'll have panels with industry leaders on them, talking about everything from you know, ref analytics to the future. We had a great, I enjoyed it personally, a great panel called Sports in 2040. And it was basically meant to be, it's 2020, we're looking ahead 20 years. And then obviously a ton of business-driven panels around ticketing analytics and fan analytics and things like that. So we'll have those panels. Then we have research papers, which are a huge part of the conference. If any of you guys follow the sports analytics space, Kirk Goldsberry was found at the conference. He's a writer. He wrote for, I think, The Ringer. He worked for the Sacramento Kings, the Spurs for a long time. Second Spectrum, which is a huge player in terms of data tracking of players, was conceived out of winning the research paper competition 2 years in a row. Number Fire, which was acquired by FanDuel. The 2 founders met at the Sloan conference. And then the other stuff, we have a bunch of different competitions, case competition for MBA students. DraftKings has a big innovation competition. So there's lots of a good mix. And what we try to do, again, we're a 501c3, is focus on growing the discussion around analytics on the team and the business side. Tons of people who were student leads are now working in the industry, which is a byproduct I didn't foresee 15 years ago when we started the conference. But the impact has been that a lot of organizations are looking to find talented people. The conference ends up being not only a location to talk about ideas, but also a very prominent hiring ground for folks who want to get into the industry. We keep the price of attending the conference very low compared to other conferences. So for students, as an example, we actually lose money on the students, and that's about 40% of our conference attendees. I think they pay like $200. And then we charge a little bit. We charge more for people who can, you know, write it off to business, but not that much more. We're not charging like, you know, $1,500 or $2,000 for the event. So I think in terms of highlights, obviously we mentioned Barack Obama early on. Having him come and speak at the conference, and Daryl and I interviewed him, was definitely a life highlight. Only probably surpassed by when I told him I had a bone to pick with him, which may not have been my smartest move, telling the President of the United States. But it was only that he was giving Daryl a lot of credit for basketball. And I was like, you know, President Obama, just, you know, I'm the one who actually played in college. So if you want to talk basketball, I'm probably the person you should be talking to. So that's a true story. Daryl, I think, like, turned green when I said I have a bone to pick with you. Anyways, so I think the way it's changed it is, you know, if you think about where sports analytics was when we started the conference in 2006, I mean, Moneyball had just, it wasn't a movie yet, so it was still a book. It was maybe only a couple of years old, and we had a lot of early thinkers come and speak. and attend. And it was definitely this kind of underlying area of sports for a long time. And we would talk about how we were the naysayers. I think now at this point, what's been fun for me to watch as someone who loves data and is looking at the people who are attending the conference is seeing how we went from a lot of baseball teams to a lot of NBA teams. Even I remember one year the Lakers got called out for being the only NBA team that didn't send anyone. And then watching the steady uptick of NFL teams, and then of course soccer. And now we're seeing all of these ancillary sports. Volleyball has come, and we have people traveling from New Zealand, Australia, probably not this year with everything happening on travel, but from international waters, I mean. But the conference has had a lot of impact. I'm really proud of it, but I think what I am most proud of is that we've had, when you have like these type A students who just want to do better than the year before, like the conference is going to get better because they want to one up the conference the year before, and they're learning and they're passionate, and then we're passionate about creating new ideas and concepts. And I think it's they're learning a lot. We're helping educate them. They're growing the conference, and there's just a lot of organic growth that I'm just really proud of. And I think it's also just really fun because Daryl and I just basically get on the phone and kind of like talk smack to each other, and the students like are confused because we're just like having a good time. But he's like, he's one of my best friends who was the officiant at my wedding. And so it's also just like a great excuse to be continuing to build and create something with people with a person, Daryl in this case, and then the students who like, I know, like, I watch as they get married and have kids. I'm just like, I'm like a coach now. So.
No, absolutely. I know for a fact that sports will forever be changed because of the work in analytics. And one case that I had heard about in the past few years, there's a general manager who just left a team in the National Hockey League, but the sole reason that he was hired as the youngest general manager in the NHL is because of his analytics background. Yeah. And that's what makes people successful. So part of your work.
One of the ways. I mean, yeah. I think that's the other thing that both, I mean, probably Daryl less so than me, but the data is very insightful, and it gives you direction of where to focus and where there might be opportunities, but it's not the only way to go. Like I'll give you an example. We were doing, I guess I can't say who the client is, but we were doing a lot of work with an MMA, mixed martial arts organization. And one of our data scientists was doing a bunch of the research, and he was looking at Madison Square Garden, and I was giving feedback, and I said MSG, and he's not a sports fan, so he didn't know what MSG was. He thought it was something not Madison Square Garden. So I think like providing that context to any data analysis is super important, and having a passion for sports to be able to think creatively about what are the next pieces of analysis and how to think about the business or the performance on the team side is an art as well as the science behind doing the data analytics.
Absolutely. So we do have a question here from the audience. Sure. Chad asks, do you have your own proprietary software to aggregate, process, and visualize the data, or are you off-the-shelf solutions?
Yeah, so we do have a bunch of IP on the data aggregation. We're a tech stack, and that we're building on top. But then, yeah, we have a ton of engineers and coders, and to have built all of our IP to aggregate and really create the single record of the customer or of whatever inventory we're tracking. The visualization is we're doing that within Tableau, which sits on top of our platform. But we have, it's within our portal, and we've added a bunch of unique capabilities that Tableau doesn't have to enhance the experience. Tableau is pretty floored by some of the work that we've done and how we've been able to extend their product. And so they consider us a very savvy user of that platform. But yeah, we do get calls all the time from other data visualization partners who would like us to switch over to their platform. So I'm open to listening always.
I've heard that listening is always a great skill. Don't have to take the action, but keeping those ears open is good. So as we approach the end here, I'd like to ask one final question. Bringing our conversation full circle, have you struggled to balance your role in sports and maintain your faith? And having your own family, has your perception of this balancing act changed at all?
Yeah, I mean, again, working for an organization that's owned by the Krafts, who are obviously deeply religious, and certainly they personify family and the importance of family, has certainly not made it challenging for me in that regard. Kind of, you get your work done, and there shouldn't be any inhibitions to what you need to do from a religious perspective. So I certainly, in my experiences, haven't. But I'm aware that other folks have. In terms of the balancing act with my family, so my wife is Christian, and so it is really tricky competing with Santa. I'll say that. But we're giving our kids exposure to both, and they're pretty young. But as soon as we can get back into the synagogue and the temple, I'm excited to get them more actively engaged. So not easy, but I don't think balancing anything with like young kids and running a company and on the side running a conference gives me too much time. But my Jewish religion is important to me. In particular, my experiences with Maccabi were influential in giving me a lot of confidence and setting me on a great path for the rest of my basketball career, which in turn was very meaningful for my professional career. So, I mean, I think I feel lucky to have the Jewish community and have had the experiences that I've had.
Well, we'd like to thank you for your time here tonight. And we wanted to let everyone in the audience know that Maccabi USA is a nonprofit organization. If you would like to support our mission of building community through programs like this, please consider making a tax-deductible donation through the link Mackenzie has posted in the chat here tonight. Again, Jessica, thank you very much for your time. This has been a true honor to have this conversation with you and share it with all of my friends here at Maccabi USA.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for having me. If there's any other questions, feel free to reach out, and we're always hiring. So not right now, actually, but we're always looking for good talent. So, so if you have interest in learning more about what we do at Kager, let me know. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sammy and Jessica. We really appreciate your time. There are a couple comments here that I just wanted to inform you about. So Jordan Schlachter, he's speaking from the entire Harvard basketball community, is so proud of your work and that you are truly a legend of the Ivy League and beyond. Thank you for that note, Jordan. If anybody does have additional questions, feel free to send us an email at maccabi@maccabiusa.com, and we'd be happy to forward that question on to Jessica. And I want to extend Jessica a formal invitation to join us in 2022 at the Maccabi Games in Israel.
All right.
Which we are currently working towards. We will have women's basketball, and we're hoping to bring a U18 and U16 team. We are looking for coaches too, so if you're interested,
and masters,
I can help you out there since I work with basketball. But anyways, thank you again so much, and we hope to see everybody next week for the sports show on Tuesday with legendary LSU coach Skip Bertman and Ken Babby, who owns 2 minor league baseball teams as well. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, Sammy.